I walk into my dining room in my school uniform, carrying a backpack, and I see around 50 strangers in my house, eating and laughing together. My mother is bringing one dish after the other, and my father is having a time of his life serving them food. Well, who are these people? What are they doing in my house? I'm surprised, confused, and overwhelmed to see a ton of strangers in my house. Our house was on this narrow street in a small northern city of Pakistan called Peshawar, where I was born and where I spent the first few years of my life. As soon as the clock would strike 10 at night, dozens of stray dogs would gather outside our main gate, hungry, dirty, and creepy. The next day, I would again see a ton of strangers in my house. This was my life every single day, unusual and strange. I started questioning the circumstances of my household as early as I started talking and thinking. Whenever I would go to my friend's house to play, I would realize how different my household operates. While everyone else is talking about taking the next trip to theme park and buying Mickey Mouse t-shirts, why are we talking about saving children from famine in Sudan? Why is the fridge always empty at night? Why does our dinner table conversations always revolve around world-famous historic peacemakers? That being said, the kind of education I was receiving at school was also very different than my upbringing at home. And to be honest, that little 3-year-old me was very confused. At last, a time came when those strangers and dogs started to bring comfort instead of confusion. It was after much later in life that I realized that my house is not just a home for my family. In fact, it's an open sanctuary for every hungry human being and animal. What makes it interesting is that my parents were not the kind of rich philanthropists who were offering a part of themselves from their comfort zone. They were themselves, in fact, dealing with the kind of difficulties that are hard for human mind to even comprehend. Years later, I realized and recognized that there are way too many stories and memories in my life that needs to be preserved and shared. So I picked up a pen and started writing a book. While that book is still a work in progress, I have several chapters of my life written down and compiled. My aim was to explore what altruism truly is, and what is this instinct that devotes us to the well-being of other people in such a way that some of us are even ready to put other people's needs, comfort, and safety before our own. My father held an executive position in Pakistan News Bureau as a senior journalist. He recalls that his college days were so bad that he didn't have shoes to wear. He would take the patches of leather and sew them. He couldn't afford books, so he would ask his seniors to lend him the book the night before an exam. He had this burning passion of journalism and bringing justice to those who don't have a voice of their own. Somehow, by earning scholarships, he made his way up to the university, got his master's in journalism, and joined workforce as a fearless journalist. He was among the few very highly specialized group of journalists who were appointed to cover worldwide wars on terrorism. He led a team of strong journalists. When planning for news coverage assignments, he would help assign the safest places in the world to his teammates and volunteer to take the most dangerous, physically challenging, and life-threatening assignments for himself. He would often justify this by saying that his purpose in life is to bring justice to those who can't stand up for themselves. And this cannot be done from the comfort of your house. He would starve for nights, endure burning sun and thirst for days, go off communication for weeks, dodge the bullets, and stay in office for nights in a row to make sure that no piece of information is cut from the facts. He quickly grabbed attention from CNN, BBC, and several other Western media platforms that offered him lucrative offers. He would often politely decline those offers by telling them that for now, there's way too much work that needs to be done in Pakistan, a beautiful country of peaceful people that is being slowly tarnished by fragments of terrorism that is not even its homegrown product. His stories of being involved with the tribal communities to solve the problem of human trafficking and honor killing is a story for another day. He was also among the chosen very few highly specialized group of journalists who were appointed by the government of Pakistan to accompany the dignitaries of the country, like Air Chief Marshal, Chief of Army, ministers, and at times even presidents and prime ministers. He accompanied the 8th president of Pakistan during his tours to Middle East, who later lauded him as one of the most competent journalists Pakistan has ever produced. He would go all around the world and meet elite journalists from all around the world, and honestly brought home the kind of knowledge and world information that could not be found in books. And I'm so thankful for him for raising me a person who was open and very exposed to first-hand raw world information. My mother, a very bold, outspoken, and intimidating journalist herself, came to my dad's attention due to her rising reputation of boldness within the local group of journalists. My dad used to recall that it was almost impossible to see a daunting and fiercely strong 25-year-old living and studying in one of the most patriarchal communities in the deep tribal zone of Pakistan, in the time when even the idea of women leaving her house was not well conceived by some families, let alone be educated in modern world media and be the voice of change, both in politics and women's rights. She endured extreme backlash, psychological harassment, and trauma for her efforts to break patriarchy throughout her life in and outside of career. In her bold and transparent reports where she would openly call out corruption and demand justice, would attract major newspapers across her country. She was threatened multiple times when she demanded justice for the underprivileged women subjected to domestic violence. I still remember one day my dad leaning against the wall, wearing his travel blazer, a bag at his feet, his 6 feet 4 inches, almost reaching the ceiling. "Hey, Sapna," he said, peaceful smile on his face. "Come give me a hug." I was about 4 years old, and I happily leaned into him, as did my mother. They were both taller than me, but I did hear him whisper something. "I might not come back this time." When he left, I asked my mom what he meant. She said, "He goes to wars and saves people, Sapna. It's very dangerous out there." She said that in her very loving but strong way. I was young, but not naive. I was loved and felt safe, but I was always very aware of the kind of difficulties and the life that my parents endure to bring a difference in the lives of other people. I was very confused that what is this love greater than the love of someone's own daughter and wife that even death does not scare him? Well, he did come back, but in an ambulance, pale and weak, with an injured eye and a failed kidney. Due to unavailability of water, he survived on the droplets of puddle water for about a month. From that day on, his health started to deteriorate fast, but we finally found his kidney donor. It was a journey of 8 years after the day of kidney transplant that completely transformed my life and taught me some of the most valuable lessons about resilience, altruism, and in general life. My mother, who was a very loyal and loving partner to my father, spent every minute of 8 years with him, left house at sunrise in the morning to be with him at the hospital, and returned in the middle of nights. During all those years when she could not be with me and attend me properly, she brought me a 20-pound world encyclopedia and requested me to learn about 2 things: global inequality and justice. My homework had clearly begun. I studied hard, traveled a little bit, came across several nonprofit organizations, eventually co-founded one of my own. Realizing that my father does not have a lot of time left, my parents would walk down the street and look for people who needed resources. From the little wealth they acquired, they helped build houses for the people of slum communities, sent children to school, became basic provider for the families in need, and paid for the patients awaiting clearance in the operating room. I should tell that when my father would get back from work, he would just change from his professional fancy attire into a very low-key outfit and just run outside without having dinner and sit in the nearby slum communities to just talk to people and listen to their problems. He was so ambitious, always seen with his documents, devising an economic plan and education plan for those families and kids. Well, when it was confirmed that my father will not survive and my parents were very devoted to spend every penny they have earned for the well-being of community and neighborhood, they started to live a very fulfilled life until one fine day when I was told that my best friend is no more. Losing a father is a trauma that I don't wish on any 12-year-old. From that day on, I started to miserably fail my classes, failed my 6th grade, stopped speaking to everybody, and began a very serious research on altruism. Well, as serious as a 12-year-old could do. Soon after my dad's death, my guardianship was claimed by someone by bribing the judges and producing fake documents to prove that my mother is not my real mother and that I should be given to my claimed guardian in hopes of acquiring whatever my dad has left me. My mother once again picked up the books, this time the books of law, fought relentlessly in the court for years, and fought for me and brought me home. While all that was happening and she was standing up for herself and fighting for me, she realized that just like me, there must be other women and girls out there who are fighting for their basic right to life and belonging. So she sought out several nonprofit organizations and met with 16 women who were caught up in fake allegations, were proven innocent, but were too poor to afford the bail. So she sold her wedding jewelry, her very last asset, to free those women and allowing all of us to enjoy the freedom together. She encountered with women trafficking. Now I must tell you, as a single woman raising a teenage daughter in one of the most patriarchal setups, encountering with women trafficking was one of the most dangerous and life-threatening days of my life that my mother dived straight into. By putting her own life to risk, she was able to free 2 women from the trafficking mafia. The moments of those days still give me chills. While this all craziness was happening, and she was dealing with so much, raising me, dealing with my high school drama, teenage drama, and working 3 jobs, I asked my mom, how do you do all this, and why do you do what you do? She told me that to answer that, Sapna, you have to ask yourself a couple questions. You first have to ask, what is your purpose in life? And when you have that answer down, you have to ask yourself, are you interested in it, or are you committed to doing it? She said, if you're interested, you will do when it's convenient for you to do. But if you're committed, you will do whatever it takes you to do that. 8 years flash forward. Due to negligence of doctor and wrong medication, my mother's abdomen got poisoned, and the doctors gave us a final 48-hour verdict. My mother's life support was supposed to be switched off. I was swallowed in this deep void of grief. It was an emptiness that constricted my ability to think or to even breathe. It was an emptiness that filled my heart and lungs and made every breath a challenge. I didn't even want to live myself anymore. During all those dark thoughts, I started to think about my parents who thrived in the face of adversity and got up from their beds every morning to bring the difference in the lives of other people. I remember my parents told me that to have true success in life, you need a goal far bigger than your own self. They also told me that serving humanity gives them this supernatural energy to get through the darkest days of their lives. So I did what they used to do. While my mother was living the last few hours of her life and I was choking of grief, I woke up from my bed and ran to the nearby bookstore. I bought dozens of random cards and sticky notes, wrote beautiful messages for strangers, and started placing them on the windshield of random cars. I emptied my emergency saving fund. And suddenly I recalled those days when my parents would empty the fridge every night to feed people. My parents' empty fridge was their way of keep going, knowing that they have to wake up every morning to fill the fridge, to feed the strangers and the dogs, gave my parents the resilience, the passion, and the commitment to keep going and be resilient. So I also did the same. I emptied my fridge, and to get through those 48 deadly hours of my life, I did all I could do within my capacity to bring a difference in the lives of other people. And let me tell you what happened. While my mother was still dying and I was still grieving, my neurochemistry suddenly changed. All of a sudden, I wanted to live, and that feeling of fear was replaced by that of hope and courage. I have observed two things in my journey to writing this book. Number one, my parents, who were highly successful, had great educational degrees and experience in working in premium newspapers, were more known in the community because of their altruism than of their credentials. Number two, they were considered more successful by their peers as compared to those with even higher educational credentials and even premium experiences of the world. This brought me to my basic question that what is it that truly determines our success? Due to my firsthand experience of living this kind of life that I've just shared with you and being raised by altruist and resilient parents, I have concluded that of all human traits possibly present in a human, it is not your education, your experience, or your credentials, or your talent that determines how far and how high you will go in life. Now, there's no arguing that these traits certainly help you climb the ladder, but in actuality, it is your resilience that determines how far and how high you will go in life. It is your grit and a muscle to wake up every morning, even in the toughest times of your life. Now here you may pause and ask me that what is this that makes us resilient? In my book, I have introduced this mystery as buoyancy therapy, which is an ability to float on water, even in storms. Imagine yourself a pebble whose ideas and thoughts are so dense, so self-centered, so closely linked and bound, that when you are thrown in the current of life, you lose your buoyancy and are destined to sink. This is not the case with the big ship that courses these waters. It stays afloat because it's capable of holding everybody together. When there's a storm, everybody fights and makes it to the shore safely. My definition of success was the funeral of my father that was attended by more than 1,000 people, out of which hundreds of them were just strangers who never knew him, other than just a man who used to bring them water. Or my definition of success is my dying mother. When she was on her deathbed, I would receive hundreds of calls from all around the country. People who I didn't know would just tell me how important it is for her to live. It is no wonder that through my story, you all got to know my parents the way I got to know them. But my goal for you is to not fall in love with a fragment of their existence, but to call yourself to begin to take an action, to make your fragment of existence a reason for someone else to exist, so that your fragment can fight all the storms of life and cultivate a community and legacy that lives beyond your existence. So next time, when you absolutely cannot get up from your beds in the morning, wake up for someone else. Thank you.